So I've got up to the top floor with my girlfriend, put the card key in the lock of the door, and as soon as I did, all hell broke loose. There were police screaming down the corridor, screaming at me, "Don't move, hands up," machine guns out, handguns, balaclavas on. So they get us in the hotel room, and I said, "Look, guys, knowing full well how corrupt the Ecuadorian police are, I said, look, guys, is there any other way that we can do this? I'll give you 25 grand in cash now. And if you give me a telephone, I'll make a few phone calls and I'll get some money transferred. However much you want, 100,000, 200,000, I'll have it here within an hour. And you can keep the tent. I don't want it." And they were like, "No, what do you think we are? We're not corrupt. We're the Ecuadorian police." And I laughed at them. I said, "You are taking the piss, aren't you? I know you are corrupt." It was because the British police were there. They couldn't do anything.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Invest in Yourself podcast. Today I'm joined by a former cocaine smuggler named Pieter Tritton. Peter shares how he was arrested a few times. He ultimately did get caught and ended up serving over 10 years in a dangerous Ecuador prison. Peter shares how dangerous the prison that he was at was and how lucky he was able to make it out and share his story. After he got out of prison for the last time, this is when he decided to change his life around. He started his own business, he wrote a book, and has been doing a number of podcasts. Please subscribe to my channel for more interviews like this. And without further ado, let's get into Peter's story. All right, well, everyone, welcome back to the Invest in Yourself podcast. Today I got a new guest on today. I got Peter. Peter, thank you for taking out some time and coming on my podcast today, man. I really do appreciate it, man.
No worries. Thanks for inviting me on, Adrian.
Well, I appreciate it. I've seen you doing a lot of podcasts, man, throughout the years, and I was like, yeah, I seen you on Vlad TV recently, and I mean, you did that a number of years ago, and I was like, wow, I should really reach out.
The Vlad TV interview was actually only about a year ago.
Okay, yeah, maybe you were on Sean Atwood's podcast.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. That was that was
okay.
Way back.
Yeah. Well, I seen all these and I was like, wow, man, I should reach out to this guy because you got a very unique story. And on top of that, you've changed your life around. You have a different outlook on crime. And I seen you on Business Insider, how crime works. So
that went well. Yeah.
you've been on a lot of different platforms, man. So we're gonna, with your story, we won't. I think the whole thing the outline of the show is, we're going to go into Peter's story where we'll go into his early life and get into how he got involved with smuggling drugs, manufacturing them, and how he landed himself in prison and eventually got out of that life and changed his life around. So, Peter, what was your upbringing like? How was your early life, and was it rough? I mean,
to some degree it was rough. But I mean, not as rough as other people have had it, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, I grew up in the English countryside in a small village, rural, very quiet. But growing up, my mum developed quite a heavy dependency on alcohol, which was really stressful because when she drank, she wasn't like normal people. When they have a drink, she would get psychotic. She'd have psychotic episodes every time. So that was really stressful for me and my younger sister growing up around that. My dad was also smoking weed or hashish as I was growing up, which I didn't, when you're growing up as a kid, you don't really realize these things are taking place around you. You don't really appreciate what's happening. You understand it fully. So it was only when I sort of became a bit older and got to about the age of 10 and 11, around the time my parents divorced, that I sort of fully became aware of what drugs were and how they could affect you, and well, at least hash anyway. So quite quickly after that realization, started smoking myself, and that was quite quickly followed by dealing, at school, and then to the sort of illegal rave scene in Britain started happening around that time as well. So I would have been about 13, 14, when that really started kicking off big time here. So we're talking like 88, 89, 90. Those were like the summers of love, as they called them in Britain, when ecstasy became a really big thing here. So I started going along to all the illegal raves, and that's when the dealing really sort of grew in scale, shall we say. I mean, it was always... Go on.
I was gonna say, how did you maneuver your way into that, or like, how did you approach even being able to get in contact or with dealing or any of that?
I mean, drugs were really prevalent at the time. There were, you know, you would go to one of these free parties, and there were so many people dealing drugs there. I realised it was really easy to get away with doing it because there was literally no control from the police in the early days. They would just set up a cordon around the edge of the party and let the party happen because they didn't at the time they didn't have the laws to stop it happening. So it was very easy once you're in the party to sell drugs, buy drugs, and also my stepbrothers were heavily involved in the illegal rave scene. One was a really quite well-known DJ and is quite well-known now. And they were both really involved in all that sort of stuff. And so this was my mum's partner's sons. So I sort of started tagging along with them more than anything. I sort of wanted to emulate the older brothers. So it was very easy for me to get drugs from them. And then also I started developing my own contacts as time went on. You know, they introduced me to other people. I then met other people at parties. You just do. If you're around drugs, you're taking drugs and you're selling drugs, you meet people and you develop a network that slowly but surely expands like a spider's web, you know, with tentacles everywhere, so to speak.
Right. And so eventually you would just kind of, well, you know, fast forward a little bit, like you would, what were the next steps of you getting a little deeper into this?
Yeah, I mean, after doing my, what would be your, I'm trying to work out what the equivalent is in America, like your college, your school, up to about the age of 16. So in England, we do our GCSEs, which are like our sort of standard exams in, you know, all the various subjects you do at school. After doing those, you could do what are called A levels, which then lead on to university. So I was doing my A levels at a new sixth form college, and I actually ran into some trouble. Somebody informed on my activities to the police, and I got arrested leaving my home one morning, 8:30 in the morning, and that just stopped me dead in my tracks, basically, and didn't want to jeopardize my chances of going to university and, you know, doing an exam, my general future. So stopped dealing all drugs at about the age of 17. The college expelled me, but let me sit my exams, so I had to revise at home. So having gained the A levels, gained 4, I managed to get 4 different offers from universities around the country. One was from Liverpool, the other Cardiff, Southampton, and Bradford. And I decided to go to Cardiff University because it was local or closer to home than the others. And it was really when I hit university that things really escalated and really took off in a big way. So having arrived at university, I realized that trying to survive on the student loan that you were given here wasn't easy, should we say. I didn't have any financial backing from my family, so it was pretty tough financially. And I just immediately saw there was a massive opportunity there to sell drugs to students who, you know, many of them it's their first time away from home. Hardly anybody knew where to find drugs at the university, but I did. So being the entrepreneurial type that I am, decided to start selling drugs again. And very, very quickly built up a large network throughout the student groups. But also started again to meet local dealers in Cardiff. And it was once I'd met them that the larger amounts started being requested. So it went from, you know, bringing down half an ounce of cocaine to sell to some students to being asked for 9 ounces, then half a kilo, then a kilo, you know, from one person, half a kilo from somebody else. And, you know, before I knew it, within a space of 6 months, I'd gone from that first half an ounce of cocaine to dealing kilos 2, 3, 4 kilos a week, depending on what was asked for. Tens of thousands of pills, hundreds of kilos of hashish or weed every week. And the stress of all of this became, as you can imagine, trying to do university and maintain all of this dealing became really stressful, and had a bit of a sort of breakdown, dropped out of university, and just became a full-time drug dealer, basically. All the illegal raves were still going on. That had become really big. So, and I just had a huge network by this point. And I decided to expand it even further I moved from Cardiff to Bristol, which is fairly close by, big city again. Already had a few contacts there. So again, expanded into that city, then decided to expand into Scotland. I was just trying to grow the business as big and as quick as I could, which was probably quite crazy, really. But, it got to quite a large scale, as I've said. And having been out of university for about, 3 or 4 years, had quite a bit of trouble in Bristol with some people down there, and decided to move back to my home area. And at that point, again, ran into trouble with the police. So in May of 2000, I went into a house to deliver 2 or 3 ounces of cocaine in the Cotswolds, which is a very nice area of Gloucestershire, or Britain, sorry. And as I went into the house, met the guy, did the deal, came out. I didn't realise the place was under surveillance by the local police. So I jumped in my van that I was driving, go about 7 miles up the road, and a marked police car came up behind me. Blue lights came on, and I thought it was like a routine traffic stop, but it wasn't. It was, a police surveillance operation. So as I'd left the house, they raided it, found the guy trying to get all the cocaine down the toilet, found some scales, found a tick list, found money, all the paraphernalia. And when they stopped me on the road, they found in the front of the van a briefcase that contained about 2,000 pills, ecstasy pills, some coke, some hash, and then they later found a load more stuff at the house I was living in. Kilos of hash, ounces of cocaine, weed, amphetamine, a sawn-off shotgun, all sorts of stuff.
So, what was going through your head when they were here?
I was in the police station at this point, so not a lot. I just went no comment. I knew I was pretty well, I was done. I was banged to rights. So just went no comment, maintained a no comment interview for 6 days, which pissed them off. And after that, got remanded into the prison. I was put down as a potential Category A prisoner, which is really high security. So the security levels, I was the only potential Category A prisoner in the whole of Gloucester prison at the time, and ended up spending nearly 2 years on remand, which I think was their longest remand prisoner in 15 years. And honestly, the security was insane. Just to feed me, they would close the entire wing down, get me out of my cell, put 2 officers in front, 2 behind me, escort me down to the hot plate, the servery, get my food, take me back to the cell, lock me in. I wasn't allowed to talk to anybody else. I had to exercise on my own. All my movements were noted down in a notebook. It's called being on the book. So every time I went in or out of the cell, they would note down where I was going, what time I was going, who I associated with, who I spoke to. All my calls were recorded, my visits behind perspex. It was just a head fuck, basically.
For 2 years.
Well, it eased off as time went by. That went on for about a year, that sort of thing.
Oh, still, that's a long time, yeah.
Yeah, it was stressful. First time in prison, long head, hippie graver. And I was like, wow, this is insane. And they kept saying, oh, we know you're associated with these big crime families in London, you know, with really well-known people, you know, heavy crime figures of the time. And I was just like, I don't know what you're talking about. You got the wrong person.
So that's what they were trying to pursue you as, that you were connected with them, like that you were
Well, I mean, I
dealing,
was.
that you were,
I
that you
just
were.
didn't want to acknowledge the fact that I was. And also, I, you know, as I was dealing the drugs, I didn't really want to know who they were coming from, because the less you knew, the better. Because at the end of the day, the more you know, the more of a risk you are to someone else, the more likely you are to end up dead in a ditch, quite frankly.
So you said that you were connected to them. Can you say now who the families were at
No,
all? Or
I
no,
mean,
no.
it's been mentioned in the press before, but
Yeah. You just rather not speak on it. No, I mean, I
yeah.
get it. No, you said you would rather not speak about it now.
Well, I'm not going to mention any names there right now.
No,
No.
no, I get it. No, no, no need to. But anyhow, I mean, so anyway, after you went through this and you continued to go down, how long were you locked up
Yeah,
in
so
the
in
U?
the UK, I got quite a lenient sentence for the amount of drugs and stuff. But as I said, it was the first time in prison. I went guilty after 9 months. So ended up spending nearly 2 years on remand before I got sentenced. So anyway, I got sentenced to 5 years in prison. Served nearly all of that in high security prisons. Ended up in a prison called Parkhurst, which was like Alcatraz. It's a prison on an island in the English Channel. So it's a bit like Alcatraz. It was really, at the time, it was supposed to be high security, but yeah, it was, you know, prison, wherever you are in the world, you're behind the walls. You just have to forget about the outside world and just get on with your life inside. Just get your head down, read books, educate yourself, do whatever you have to do to get through it, basically.
Hmm.
So,
What did you do? Did you?
well, I
This
learned
was
to
your
paint and
first.
decorate,
Yeah.
which is what I'm doing now. Um, I mean, my dad was a builder growing up, so it kind of runs in the blood a bit. But yeah, I just kept my head down. I mean, I was locked in the cell a lot of the time anyway. So I did a lot of reading, uh, study and stuff. um, and, you know, having gone through this experience, I didn't want to know about drug dealing anymore. I was just like, yeah, that's me done. I'm out. And didn't have anything to do with drugs in prison. And, you know, fully planned to go straight when I got out, which I did. Started a painting and decorating business. But whilst I was in prison in 2001, obviously 9/11 happened. And whilst sat there, I saw that the security levels went through the roof. They started bringing in the new scanners that you see at the airports nowadays and the seaports. So inadvertently, quite a lot of drug dealers and drug mules were getting caught up in all heightened security. So people bringing powdered cocaine into Britain or cocaine in block form were all getting arrested because of the heightened security. And around this time, whilst I was in prison, I used to get the Sunday Times, which is like a major newspaper, the Times newspaper, like a bit like New York Times. So anyway, I've got this Sunday Times one weekend, and I'm sat there reading, and I come across an article about a shipment of cocaine that's been seized in a container port in Britain, inside a shipping container, of plastic garden patio sets, you know, like the furniture you have in your patio, like the white plastic stuff.
Mhm.
And the cocaine was actually in the plastic. It was mixed into the plastic, so it not just wrapped in plastic. I mean, actually mixed into the fabric of the furniture, so it was turned into plastic. And this was revolutionary at the time. This was like a new thing that I'd not seen before, and I was pretty genned up on all the methods of importing cocaine because it was something I was interested in. And it struck me as the future of cocaine trafficking, basically, because of, you know, like I said, all the heightened security. This method of impregnating cocaine would beat the scanner, would beat the X-ray, would beat the sniffer dogs. Well, at the time I didn't know this, but we were able to beat the reactive test as well by putting in another chemical to counter the reactive test, the liquid test. So having read this article about this cocaine being seized and no one being arrested, which was the part I liked, I was like, wow, this is genius. So got my co-defendants, who were by this time also in Parkhurst with me. So I got them around me and I said, look guys, when we get out, there's no way we can go back to dealing drugs the way we were before, because now we're well known by the British police. We're already in prison. They know our MO, our modus operandi. We just cannot go back to dealing the way that we were doing before, because A, when we get out, they're going to be watching us, and B, we're too well known now. So I showed them the article and I said, look, if when we get out, if we decide to go back to dealing drugs in any way, shape or form, the only thing I want to do is start importing cocaine directly from South America, impregnated in plastic or rubber or something that's like that, that's as safe as possible and foolproof as possible, and stands the greatest risk of getting through. Bearing in mind at this point in time, hardly anybody was using this method. It was, like I said earlier, it was a new way of doing things. So they were like, well, let's see what happens. And I said, well, look, if you get a phone call from me, you'll know what it's about. So just be aware that if I call you, don't say anything on the phone, just arrange a meet and we'll do everything face to face, because obviously we were super paranoid about telephones and any electronic means of communication by this point. So I get released and start the painting and decorating, and I'm going straight, keeping my head down, doing a legit day's work. But the thing is, I realized quite quickly that a legit day's work is hard work, and you're not earning like 10 grand in a day like I sometimes would before, or even in an hour. And instead of earning like 10 grand in an hour or a day, I'm earning maybe £500 to £1,000 a week. And it's a big nosedive and a big difference to what I'm, the whole lifestyle that I'm used to. So it was quite difficult for me to adjust. Added to which, all of my old associates and contacts were constantly phoning me up saying, do you want to do this? Do you want to be involved in that? Can you get us cocaine? Can you get us ecstasy? Can you get us hashish? Or offering me stuff, So almost on a daily, I was getting phoned up and asked if I could either provide something or did I want something. And I just kept saying, no, I'm not involved, I'm out, don't want to know. And then as time went by, gradually, little by little, the daily grind of working just started to get me down. I didn't see any sort of future in what I was doing. And I'd started dabbling with drugs again at the weekend with my girlfriend. And there came a day, there was one particular client who I was working for, painting and decorating, they didn't pay me. And that really pissed me off. And it was one of those days, you have a bad day sometimes. This was like a bad day times 10. And I went, fuck this. And I picked up the phone, and it was one of those fucking days, I call them. And I went, fuck this. I've had enough of doing this. It's doing my head in. I can't carry on doing this. Well, I know I can make so much money like that. So I made the fateful phone call to the guy that I'd been doing, getting most of the cocaine from before. And he said, look, let me see what I can do. I said, can you, obviously we had a meeting face to face. And I said, look, you know what I want to do? I want to get cocaine directly from South America, cut out all the people in the middle and import it into Britain or Europe, impregnated in plastic or rubber. And I need from you a contact out in Colombia or Peru or Bolivia, and anywhere with a South American who can source us the drugs and hopefully help us impregnate it into plastic or rubber. And he said, well, look, let me go away and make a few phone calls to contacts up in London, and I'll see what I can do. So he went away, and about 2 weeks later, he phoned me up. He said, come and meet me. So I went and met him. And he said, okay, I've set up a meeting with a Colombian and a Chilean guy who are both operating together. It looks like they're importing cocaine already. They're certainly selling it. So initially, I went up just to buy some cocaine, to buy a kilo from them. Contacted an old acquaintance in Newport, and I said, because he'd been ringing me, and I said, look, do you still want me to get some cocaine for you? And he said, yes. And I said, well, give me the money, and I'll go up to London, I'll get a kilo, bring it back down. I sort of explained to him a little bit, because obviously I had to, what the plan was. And I said, look, would you be up for investing in this and bankrolling us? And he said, yeah, sure, as long as I get first refusal on the cocaine that comes in. And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. So go up on the first trip, meet the Colombian and Chilean, have a bit of a chat with them. They seem okay. Buy this kilo of coke from them. It's really good. So I take it back down to Newport in Wales, give it to my contact. And about, I don't know, 4 or 5 days later, maybe a week, I go back up to London, and this time I buy another kilo of coke. But I also say, look, really, the reason I'm actually here is because I want to start importing cocaine into Britain. Would you be interested in working with me and a guy that I've got who will finance the operation? We'll put some money in to invest it and get it working properly. And they're like, sure. So we set up a part. I'm cutting this all short. There's a lot of stories that I've skipped over. Anyway, you get the idea.
Right.
So set up a partnership with them. We were all, so like the three of us, me, the Colombian and Chilean, equal partners in everything. My contact who'd set up the original meeting didn't want to be involved. He said, look, just look after me on if you do anything, just sort me out with some money for setting up the initial contact meeting. I said, sure, okay, no problem. So we set up this partnership, and each of us had our own sort of roles to play. Obviously, the Colombian was the conduit for the drugs. He was from Cali in the south of Colombia, involved with the Cali cartel. So they were basically already bringing cocaine into the country, and it was, oh yeah, that's what I meant to mention. So on the second meeting, I get there, and I said, look, I want to start bringing coke into the country, impregnated in rubber or plastic. And they said, well, look, we're already doing that, and we've got this really good method that seems to be working. We've got it impregnated into latex, and we're then putting the latex into the ground sheets of tents for camping. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. That's the sort of idea that I had in mind. This is fantastic. And it was just like destiny had put us together. It just, to me, I kind of believe in destiny. I don't know whether you do, but I certainly do. And this just felt like a meeting that was destined to happen in my life. Be it for the good or the bad, I don't know. But it was definitely supposed to be. So going back to what I was saying, so the Colombian, like I said, was connected to the Cali cartel. So he was responsible for getting the cocaine in Colombia, having it made into latex, and then put into the ground sheets of the tents. We would then get the tents transported to a transit country, so a country like Ecuador or Venezuela, Argentina, Chile, a country a little bit away from the hottest. I mean, when I say hot, I mean the most the countries that actually produce cocaine. So anywhere away from Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia. So you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, like you're saying that they have the most, they produce the most?
No. What I'm saying is that we would have, once the tent was made, we would have it transported to a country that didn't produce cocaine. So somewhere like Ecuador or Venezuela that wasn't actually producing cocaine themselves. So the security was, in our minds, lesser leaving the country. Do you see what I mean? So there's a transit point. Or like the Caribbean. Or, just somewhere that's not as not so far up the list of the DEA, should we say. A
lot of factors, man, that you got to think of.
The Chileans' role was really sourcing the chemicals back in Britain, finding a location for the laboratory, the makeshift lab, getting hold of the chemist, just arranging all that sort of stuff. And my role was really logistics, getting passengers. I had people that we could sell everything to in one go. I had the financial backing to upscale things, which we did. So that was kind of my end of things, just putting everything together, really. So we did the first one. I decided to go and collect it myself from Ecuador because I didn't want to start sending people to do something that I hadn't already done myself. And also I wanted to meet the guy from Cali who was our contact. And, just understand the whole mechanism of what we were going to be doing. So I flew out to Ecuador via Holland with KLM and met our contact from Colombia and basically collected the tent off him. Which was like a big 10-man tent, weighed about 30 or 40 kilos. And when it came time to leave Ecuador, I'd actually forgotten about the luggage allowance. So having entered the country with about 20 or 30 kilos of luggage, I was suddenly leaving the country with about 100 or 150. Because not only had I got this 40-kilo 10-man tent and my luggage, but I'd also gone out and bought loads of gifts like ceramic plates, boxes of cigars, leather jackets, totally forgetting about the luggage allowance. So I stick all this on the conveyor belt at the airport, where they weigh your bags and whatnot. And the woman on the KLM desk was just like, "You're going to have to get rid of some of this stuff, lose some weight. Why don't you get rid of that tent?" And I was like, "I can't get rid of the tent, but I will get rid of some of my brand new gifts." So there's me giving away all these gifts to the people that are working at the restaurants, in the shops, in the airport. And of course, red flags started getting raised. Boxes started getting ticked. And I arrive in Holland. God knows how I made it out of Ecuador, but I arrive in Holland. And sure enough, there's a row of Dutch drug enforcement agents. And all the passengers are having to file past them. And I'm at the back of the queue. And as soon as they see my face, the head officer turns to his colleagues, says something in Dutch, and they all looked at me. And right then and there, I knew I was getting pulled in. So I get to the front of the queue, and sure enough, they said, "We need to ask you some questions. Come with us." So they stuck me in a holding room with about 30 or 40 other people, 3 or 4 of which were maybe European, all the rest South American. And sit down, I wait for my turn. They call me into the interrogation room and said, "Look, where have you been? What have you been doing?" And I'd collected a load of tourist brochures, done some. I'd been to Cotopaxi volcano in Ecuador, and just collected a bunch of tourist stuff, just as a backstory. So I said, "Look, I've been here, I've been there, I've done this, I've done that." It's all bullshit, most of it anyway. And I was expecting any minute now they're going to pull out that 10-man tent and stick it on the desk in front of me and go, "What's this?" And I was just sat there waiting for the moment, thinking about, I'm not going home. They obviously know I'm carrying. 20 minutes went by, 30 minutes of questions. And the guy wraps up the conversation. He says, "Sorry to have detained you. You're free to go." And I was like, "Really? I'm free to go?" He was like, "Yeah." And I could not believe it. And I think what saved my ass was that the tent was in transit. So as I boarded, because my final destination wasn't Amsterdam, it was London. So because of that, and because I was in transit, I think that the tent had gone from the whole of one plane straight to the other, and they hadn't intercepted it. Hadn't realised it was in the tent. They probably thought I was carrying the cocaine on me or my hand luggage, which I wasn't. So made it through there, and I thought, you know, obviously by now I'm really paranoid. I'm carrying 5 kilos of cocaine in a tent. So I started thinking, Jesus Christ, they must have told the British police that I'm carrying cocaine and they're going to get me arrested when I land in London, Stansted. So it's a very short flight from Holland to Britain, 45-minute flight. So we take off, we land, and I get to the carousel, and there's the tent going round and round on the carousel. And I'm thinking, shall I? I'm sort of looking around to make sure, there's not loads of police there. And in the end, I go, fuck it, I'm going to have to grab it. So I grabbed it, and nothing happened because I was expecting the police to dive on me. I walked straight through customs, and I'm out, and I'm back, and we've done it. So that was the first one. And we each made, I think it was about 80 grand. After we'd extracted it, we cut it, bulked it out. So we made the 5 kilos into, I think it was about 7.5. Sold each of those for about 24 grand, 25 grand.
So you would go on and do this for a number of years, and then this is the one that led you into going into prison, your final time, right?
Yeah. So we tried to do this, we tried to do it once a month or once every. It would be 1 month to 6 weeks that we'd do the turnaround, get a tent. Sometimes we bring 2 in on the same plane. Sometimes 1 week we'd have one land and then another the next week. It all depended what we'd had arranged, how many passengers we had at hand. Things were going pretty well. But cutting a long story short, because it's a very long story, the Colombian got busted with the Chilean in one of the labs in Crystal Palace, which is an area of London, also a football team. So they had broken something that we put in place, because obviously you don't want anybody knowing where the laboratory is. You imagine Breaking Bad and somebody knowing where their lab was. It's the cardinal sin. So I had said, look, don't let anybody know where the lab is. Don't take any of your friends there. And I was in Cali, in Colombia at the time, to sort of upscale things further, because we wanted to start bringing the cocaine in by shipping container, do 100 tents, 200 tents, 500 tents, and each time make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So I was actually there looking at 100 kilos of coke time. Plan being to buy 50 or 100 and just, do it on a bigger scale. It was much safer using shipping containers than passengers. But anyway, going back to what I was saying. So I'm in Cali, arranging this, and the Clemens Chilling were back in London doing an extraction in the lab. But as well as that, they had their friends in there drinking, doing coke, loud music playing, and of course the place got busted. They all get arrested. So ultimately I was left running everything, which was pretty stressful. The Colombian became an informant for the police, got released after 6 months in order to bring down me and everyone else that was involved. So skipping forward in time, I started suspicious of him and started to work with another Colombian, one of our chemists that we'd use to do some of the extractions for us. So I started working with this other Colombian, but also kept the informant, who I was suspicious of being an informant, around, but at arm's length, and started feeding him misinformation to confuse the police. And did this for a while, and things came to a head in Edinburgh, where I'd set up another lab, and the the new Colombian, the chemist, had come out to Edinburgh to do an extraction on 2 tents. And whilst there, we realised that we were under police surveillance. And I managed to avoid it, but they raided the apartment and arrested the Colombian and somebody out there helping with him. So after this had happened, I realised that it was only a matter of time before the forensic evidence came back on that apartment that would link me to it. So decided that I needed to leave the country pretty quickly, closed down all my bank accounts, emptied them, got rid of all my electronic devices, got rid of my car, and got a friend of mine who was in the Turkish mafia to smuggle me out of the country on there's like a ferry, hover speed ferry, that crosses from Dover to Calais, which is, from the south of England to France. So got on that. It only takes 45 minutes. So I was in the boot of the car, some bags piled on me, and got out of Britain. I went on the run, disappeared into France, and basically decided to do the last job, one last job. And it was genuinely going to be the last job. And the Colombian informant who I was doing it with, I was going to rip him off, basically, not pay him, and then disappear to Thailand with the money. So he had obviously sort of got wind of what was going to happen, or had an instinct, I don't know. But anyway, he realised that this was about the last time or the last chance he was going to have to get me arrested. So sure enough, I land in Ecuador, and as I came off the plane, there was a woman at the bottom of the stairs with a clipboard, obviously had my photograph on it, because as soon as she saw my face, she did a double take like that. And I got to the passport control, and she was there with a superior officer. And they said, "What are you doing here? Why are you in the country?" And probably at that moment, I probably should have just called it a day and disappeared. But I thought, well, I've done this before. I've been under heavy surveillance in Venezuela and Ecuador and various other countries, and we managed to get the tents out underneath the noses of the police. I've done it before. I can do it again. Riding sky high with confidence. And it didn't happen this time. The British police were there somewhere overseeing the operation, and I collected the tent. My girlfriend arrived. I was waiting for the passengers to come over, the mule, and me and my girlfriend had been out to dinner, came back to the hotel. Well, it was in the hotel. So we got back to reception, and the receptionist looked me dead in the eye because I was quite friendly with her. And she said to me, "You really should." Oh, she said, "Have you been to the Galapagos Islands this time?" And I'd never been. And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, you really should go now then." And obviously she was trying to tell me that the police were in the hotel and I should go. And I didn't click. Well, it sort of did, but it was too late anyway.
She was trying to give you the signal.
Yeah, but they had the hotel surrounded. I was done. So I've got up to the top floor with my girlfriend, put the card key in the lock of the door, and as soon as I did, all hell broke loose. There were police screaming down the corridor, "Quieto, manos arriba, no lo mueves," screaming at me, "Don't move, hands up," machine guns out, handguns, balaclavas on. So they get us in the hotel room, and I said, "Look, guys," knowing full well how corrupt the Ecuadorian police are, I said, "Look, guys, is there any other way that we can do this? I'll give you 25 grand in cash now. And if you give me a telephone, I'll make a few phone calls and I'll get some money transferred. However much you want, 100,000, 200,000, I'll have it here within an hour. And you can keep the tent. I don't want it." And they were like, "No, what do you think we are? We're not corrupt. We're the Ecuadorian police." And I laughed at them. I said, "You are taking the piss, aren't you? I know you are corrupt." It was because the British police were there. They couldn't do anything. The Colombian who I'd met and got the tent off, when I got the case papers, they'd lost in traffic. The police had lost him in traffic. They stopped him. He only had money on him, so they took their money off him and said, "Go on your way." We
Huh.
lost him in traffic.
Lost him.
Yeah, bullshit. So
So I was gonna say, to fast forward on your story, you ended up
yeah,
going to a very terrible prison. And
yeah,
how long did you go to this prison?
yeah. So I got sentenced. The British police actually asked for me to be sentenced to the maximum in Ecuador, which is 25 years. And when I saw that document, I knew I had to start bribing the police and the judges. So I started paying off the judge through my solicitor because that was pretty standard there. You pay the judge. But the British police again got wind of this and they said, look, they flew out to Ecuador and they sat me down and they said, look, we know you're trying to bribe your way out of here. If you get less than 10 years sentence or serve less than 6, we'll extradite you at the end of your sentence and give you 20. It will start at 20 in Britain and go up. So you'll get probably 20 to 25 in Britain after doing your sentence here. So I actually had to pay the judge not to give me less than 10 years. So he gave me 12 instead of 25. Can you imagine having to ask a judge not to give you less than 10 years and paying them for it? The plan was get 12, wait for the heat to die down, put in an appeal, pay some more money, get it reduced to 6, do 3, and get out. That was the plan. It didn't work. So I get 12. That part did work. I get 12. I'm in Quito. So I do about 2 years in Quito. And I can see that things aren't really working out. It doesn't look like I'm getting out. So I decided to try and escape out of the prison. So me and some Colombians, cut a long story short, again, we came up with all sorts of ideas. As you can imagine, you've got plenty of time in prison to think about escape plans. In the end, we buy a cell on B Wing in Garcia Moreno prison in Quito, which was the old prison. We bought the penultimate cell on the right-hand side of B Wing, which is virtually against the exterior wall of the prison, and start digging a tunnel out there. The guards, again, get wind that we're trying to do some fuga massiva, they called it, like a massive escape, a mass escape. So me and the Colombians all get split up, sent to different prisons all around the country. So having done about 2 years in Quito, I get sent to the third most dangerous prison in the whole of South America at that point in time, which is Guayaquil in the south of Ecuador, which is probably now #1 most dangerous prison in the whole of South America. And there I did another 7 years, went through massacres, went through gunfights, saw people hacked to death, drowned, poisoned, electrocuted, blown up, shot, beheaded. I mean, everything, every which way you can imagine. Hung, of people being killed, I've seen it and been witness to. It was horrendous. So in the end, I did 9 years and 3 months in Ecuador. And my parents had just had enough of this. And I sort of lost all hope of ever getting out there alive, really. So they, in the end, had me repatriated back to Britain. And I served the last 10 months, I think it was, in Wandsworth in London. So in total, I did 10 years and 10 days in prison out of 12. And the Ecuadorians actually wanted me to do 11 out of the 12 because of having tried to escape. So anyway, I did a long time in prison in Ecuador. In total, I've done about 13 years in prison, or slightly more, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty insane that the prisons that you went to, they had all of those weapons and stuff in there.
Oh, it was fully corrupt in there. I mean, if the guards and the director of the prison didn't do what the gang wanted them to do, the gang would have them killed. They lived, or they would wait for them when they came out of the prison. They would have a motorcyclist out there with a passenger. They just shoot.
And I think that's one major takeaway from your story is like, you're going to prison. I mean, if dealing drugs or smuggling drugs or manufacturing, like in your case, like going to prison, and getting caught and being around all the guys that you were around in there. You were around a lot of crazy things and witnessed to a lot of scary stuff in there, man. And so for anybody
Yeah,
watching or listening, this is one reason you should not get involved with crime, because I
that's
mean,
definitely a big reason.
I mean, if you take anything away from Peter's story,
Yeah.
that's that's one right there, man. But
Well,
going to
also as well, it's the effect that it has not only on your family but everyone around you. And I mean, as you've seen in America, the devastation with the opioid epidemic there. I mean, it's a huge problem, isn't it? That and methamphetamine. Luckily, in Britain, we haven't had the sort of epidemic that you've had. We're certainly not with meth, anyway. Opioids, yeah, but not with methamphetamine, thankfully.
why do you think people get involved with crime, or in your case, why did you get involved with crime?
So definitely, my reason, well, one of the main reasons was money, financial gain, and secondly, the adrenaline. I definitely became addicted to the adrenaline, the whole dealing of drugs. I keep saying it, the dealing of drugs is more addictive than the taking of drugs quite often, and just the whole uh, sort of having to outsmart the police, getting one up, getting one over on the system, beating the system, the whole sort of cat and mouse game, chess game of life. I enjoyed the whole challenge of it all. Everything about it really was addictive. And that was definitely a big part of it. The adrenaline was a big part of it for me. Got a big fly buzzing around me.
How do you think crime can be prevented? I mean, like really, like you could talk to people and do things, but I mean,
I
like
mean, really, the only way the financial incentive has to be taken out of selling drugs to make it not worth doing. I mean, if there was no financial gain in selling drugs, people wouldn't do it. Quite frankly, I mean, there'd still be a market there, obviously, because drugs are addictive. But if it was managed correctly, if everything was legalized right across the board, manufactured under license, taxed heavily to offset the burden on the health system, then I think if it was done in the right way and controlled in the right way, then it would work. But it's such a big thing and such a change, a change of mindset, and the whole operating of everything. It's almost too big a thing to do, I think, for many countries. And not only that, if you do the maths, I think to some extent they actually make more money keeping it illegal. Because if you think about the amount of money that it costs to keep people in prison, the amount of jobs that creates in the prison system, the law, the police, the judicial system, crime employs a lot of people. On the legal side of things, I mean, and illegal side, both. But I've looked at it and I've done the maths, and I'm sure to some degree that keeping it illegal is of more benefit to governments than making it legal. If you see what I'm saying.
what else do you got going on, man? I know you got a book that you 2 books you got now.
No, I still haven't finished the second.
Yeah, I know you've been
Yeah,
talking
I keep
about the
saying
second
I've
one.
got to finish it, and I do need to finish it. Um, I really must finish it, which will be the prequel to the first one.
Mhm.
The first one's El Infierno, which you could buy on Amazon. Talks about my time in prison
Yeah,
primarily. But yeah, I've hopefully working on a possible Netflix series at the moment. But somebody
that'd be
writing
cool.
a script, so let's fingers crossed it comes out
Yeah.
soon-ish.
Well, what is it, like a documentary series, or like
It'd be a bit like Breaking Bad.
oh, that'd be cool. That'd be a good one.
Yeah,
Yeah, I could see that,
I've
man.
got enough stories, trust me.
I've heard them. I've listened to the podcast, man, that
Yeah,
you've told.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I appreciate it, and I do appreciate you sharing your stories today, man, and going into detail about that and giving your perspective on how crime, why crime works, and why you got involved with it, and why
Yeah,
you left that life, man. So I thank you, and I do appreciate you taking out the time, Peter.
that's all right. Thanks, Adrian.
I hope you all enjoyed today's podcast with Peter. I'm really glad Peter changed his life around this last time after leaving prison. Change is possible. It just took Peter a little while to recognize that. Peter gave us firsthand information on how crime works and why he got involved. Please comment any key takeaways that you got from this interview with Peter. Please share this podcast with anyone that you think will enjoy it. Hit the like button if you enjoyed today's podcast. Hit the notification button if you want to get notified when the next podcast comes out. Hit subscribe if you want to get more videos from me. And at the end of this video, a playlist will pop up of all the other podcasts I've done in the past. Thank you again so much for watching. And of course, we'll see you on the next one.